Hi, I'm Joel.
Hi, I'm Zoe.
Zoe,
Yes.
I was texting you the other day about Power BI,
Mm-hmm.
and you were like, why should anyone care about Power BI?
Yes, I did say this.
And funny enough, I was like, I don't actually know the answer to this.
Yeah.
Like, I'm used to like selling Power BI to like companies, and I kind of know why
Mm-hmm.
they should care about Power BI. But when you ask me, like, you know, um, when you ask me why, as an individual, should I care, I was like, I was at a loss. So that's what I want to talk about today. It's about not necessarily why you should care, like, should you care?
Explain. We're providing an explanation for its existence. No.
Yeah, like, is it something that makes sense to learn?
Right.
So
Okay.
the reason I thought it might make sense for you is because of you were mentioning that you were at work doing some magic with Excel, which is like a classic nerd story that I've heard
Oh, for sure.
like ones of times. Like, oh, I I started out as the Excel nerd in my department.
Oh, yes. And
Right?
now I get
And then
asked all the time.
yeah, now I hang out with Bill Gates. So it's like it's a natural
Sure.
progression.
Obviously. One to the
So
next.
simple one step process.
Uh-huh.
What were you doing, I guess, is my first question. Like, what, because I never really talked to you about what magic you were creating. Not necessarily specifics, but like just
Right.
in general, what kind of stuff were you doing?
Basically, I was cleaning up a database for my job, making sure that making sure that all the formulas and conditional formatting were the same throughout several tabs within a database and managing thousands of lines of data. So um, there had been some issues between the sheets and they were copying, pasting, but there were different formulas. And so it was a cluster. And this had been happening for like a year. So the regional director at my job knew I fancied Excel and asked if I would take a look at it. So I did. It took me longer than I would like to admit, but uh, I got it done. But I was in heaven for those 3 days.
Oh, why is that?
I just really enjoy applying the formula and then just seeing it magically like work. It just looks pretty and all the formatting and things, and it's the same font in all tabs.
Yeah, I think part of the interesting, I was watching this keynote the other day and for a conference, and they were talking about just the need for more, like, not necessarily tech people in companies. There's more and more of a role of like just, people in a department with
Mm-hmm.
some tech skills, right? And some
Mm-hmm.
of the technology that people are coming up with now is supposed to be more accessible to that kind of persona, right? Somebody who doesn't
Right.
necessarily specialize in it, they just know their job and know their department, but can go fix all the crappy stuff.
Yeah, I think it
It's
comes
out
with
there.
like there's like a people who have like a basic understanding, but are also willing to learn more skills so that it becomes more efficient. At least that's what attracted me to Excel and learning more tools and different kinds of formulas and data management, because it makes my job more efficient and um, easy to look at and understand for just another individual in the company. So
Right. What kind of questions do you have about what it is? Because one of the things I get into is, I'm usually talking to people who already have some, level of knowledge about the Microsoft world and what these products
mm-hmm.
do. And some salesperson has shown them a demo and what, like they've
Right.
gone through this process, or I've shown them like they've gone through this process and they kind of,
mm-hmm.
are at a different phase. And you're like
Mm-hmm.
at an interesting phase for me because you're like at zero. Like, I don't know.
Right. Well, first question, is it free?
Yes. That's one of my
I think,
favorite. That's one of my favorite parts about it is it is the
great.
it's
Sign me up.
well
No.
it's free to start.
Yes.
Like there's
Yeah.
some, if a company
But
wants to
I
go
could,
deploy it.
right. But if I wanted to, even if there is a trial period, it at least gives me some time to play around. And then if I hate it,
Yeah. It's not even a
peace.
trial. Like you can like go crazy with
Wow.
the development tools are basically free. So you can build it all. Yeah. And go nuts.
Hold on. Pause in the editing. Well, I'm wanting to know, like, what is it? Is it a fancy Excel? Or at least from what I've seen, you know, there's like a lot of components to it. So, you can compile the data, but then you can also make visuals and stuff like that, which you may or may not need. But like, what does it look like?
So it's got like data components, like you said, that would be similar to Excel. Like, how do I bring information together? It's a little bit easier when you're like bringing stuff together, like going back to your Excel example. If you had like 3 tabs on a spreadsheet and you want to like combine them all into one
Mm-hmm.
giant table, like it has tools
Mm-hmm.
to do stuff like that, to like,
Oh, nice.
take a bunch of stuff and union it together, or take different sources of data and kind of combine them together.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one aspect, is it's kind of like the data aspect of it. Actually, there's another tool behind the scenes that you can actually use with Excel. So it's kind of cool because it's called Power Query.
Oh, okay.
Power Query works both with Power BI and Excel. So it's like this underlying framework that Microsoft has.
Mm-hmm.
The other part is a visualization. You get something like, I guess you could kind of think like PowerPoint. You kind of get like
Okay.
a blank PowerPoint slide. Now go add
Charts
charts,
and
graphs, pivot
okay.
tables, maps, like all that kind of stuff you can sort of add and rearrange. But it's like a fixed layout like PowerPoint. So it's not,
Okay.
it's yeah, it's not like pages and pages of data. It's trying to get it all summarized in one view.
I think sometimes when we talk about these um, data management or these kinds of tools, it can seem very overwhelming at first, because as someone who isn't going to be using it as a programmer, but just as like a common person, there are so many different tools and like great things that it can do. And it's awesome. But like, I only need a few things, and trying to find them and locate it. And I mean, you can watch like go to the help bar. Ooh.
Ooh.
Ooh. Some, sometimes it doesn't feel as user friendly. So is there like in its layout and design, is it able to be used by a poor peasant or a
Oh,
commoner?
so like, am I gonna have to spend, a long time learning a bunch of stuff that I don't care about?
Right. The
And
tools,
or
like, yeah.
it does a pretty good job of being intuitive for, basic stuff. Like the
Mm-hmm.
basic process of probably the most common thing everybody does at first is like take an Excel spreadsheet,
Mm-hmm.
import it into Power BI,
Mm-hmm.
and start pulling in some of the data from the spreadsheet on the visuals. That
Mm-hmm.
whole process, I don't think you need any training
Great.
to get rolling. Like you don't need
Mm-hmm.
videos, you don't need YouTube. If you're in the application, you know, there's a get data button. Okay.
That's good. That's
Oh,
helpful because it's like not some fancy. I'm not gonna have to learn a new language to understand.
yeah, it's an interesting question about is it easy? Because I'm with you. Like I usually about the time I have to read the manual is when
Mm-hmm.
I quit if I'm not making progress. Like if you're like into it
Right.
and making progress and then you're like, "Oh, now I want to do
Mm-hmm.
this thing that I don't know how to do."
Mm-hmm.
Google,
Right.
Google, Google.
Sure. But also knowing that if you wanted to, if you got into it, really liked it, and wanted to dive in more, that's also there for you. So that's helpful.
Yeah, let me ask you this because a lot of times what I hear from like the nerd community is learn this stuff so that you can become a nerd and then you can make a lot of money.
That seems legit.
I like money. Like my career, I've learned stuff, but almost always it's been in the context of some work that I'm already doing, not
Mm-hmm.
like I'm going to go learn this thing totally
Just
separate,
cause.
just like
Mm-hmm.
reinvent myself. Like usually people are trying to find, you know, some parallel because the ideal
Mm-hmm.
world is you're learning it and get paid to learn it and then make a lot more money.
Not just doing it for funsies. For some context, I am a therapist in a correctional setting. So it's not like data management is a huge part of what I do.
Right.
However,
You're also a
the
famous TikTok star.
You know the story? I'll give you the story. Never in my life. Oops. Hi. No, it's okay. I'm recording.
in the projectile of my career, uh, I want to be able to advertise more, not necessarily administrative, but uh, more meso macro capabilities. And I think data management is becoming extremely important the higher up you get in a organization because you
Mm-hmm.
become more distant from a one-on-one individual level. It will benefit me in the long run if I can even now show my administrators that I have these tools or skills, and as I develop them, then that can help me move through my company, even though it's not necessarily what I do, but I have those
Mm-hmm.
capabilities so that I can be a more well-rounded employee.
You mentioned being in therapy. We need more people with just like random backgrounds. Like, and, not nerd and accounting backgrounds, because
Mm-hmm.
just as an example, a lot of what you try to do in business intelligence is understand how people make decisions and how to help them
Mm-hmm.
make better decisions. There's
Mm-hmm.
none of that that has anything to do with any nerd field of study. Like, you don't study in accounting class how people make decisions, but you do study in social work, I'm sure. I don't know. I've never taken the classes, but I assume like, you know, people's brains
Behaviors.
and cognitive behavioral change theory. I think I got that right.
Finding those people within various backgrounds, they all bring some kind of strengths. Look at me, therapist. But no, they all bring something to the table. No, but
Exactly.
like from each background, like if you're a teacher, you know, those organization leadership skills, they're all beneficial when you're working with Power BI, I think, and can be applicable to whatever kind of data you are cultivating or managing.
Right.
And I think that's the beauty of Power BI, is because it can be used for people. You don't just have to use it as a program manager or whatever programmer. You can use it as a therapist, as, you know, whatever. Companies don't necessarily need you to say nerd on your resume, but if you say this skill with this whatever, if you advertise it as a well-developed skill, regardless of whatever field you're going into, I think that's receptive to employers.
Yeah, I agree. I think like the first step would just be to download the app from the Windows Store, and, you know, we got to find some data. I know you know somebody who might have some marketing data that they can maybe dump into Excel. That could be interesting.
Yep.
You know, stuff to look at. So I'd say download the app.
Okay.
Point it at some marketing data.
And shoot.
And try something.
Okay.
I think next time we can jump on, you know, if it's a good experience.
I come back. This is awful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, then let's do one more video and say, I hate this.
Yeah. Right.
Game over.
Right. Don't.
Well,
Yeah.
Run away.
Clickbait.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
If that happens, then, you know, then you can explain why, like, and tell them, and we'll make Microsoft fix it and make it better.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that seems like a good step. I don't like the whole training thing. Like, if you have to get trained on it, I mean, I'll help you along the way, like if you get stuck. But I'm kind of curious if you can just like take, you know, the stuff with no information
Figure it out.
and just do it.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Sweet. That's all for this week.